Hi, I'm theater critic Jay Handelman. I'm here with Carrie, arts writer at the Sarasota Herald-Tribune, and it's time for another edition of Spotlight on the Arts.
Another exciting edition.
Well, it's an exciting week because the Herald-Tribune won its second Pulitzer Prize this week.
It is exciting.
And even though we had nothing to do with that, we like to think that our arts coverage is Pulitzer Prize worthy, and maybe someday we'll join the ranks. So let's prove.
I'm not sure I'm going to live long enough for that.
Sure. So why don't you get us started and let people know what's going on in the week ahead?
Great. Well, one thing that's going on this weekend, which I think is exciting, is Poetry Life. It's Poetry Life Weekend, which is several events around poetry. This is an event that was started by Georgia Court, the owner of Bookstore One, 4 years ago. And it's gotten a little bigger and a little better every year. And this year they have a number of events. Starting on Friday afternoon, they have just a kind of coffee and conversation event with the two guests for this year. Richard Blanco, who was the poet who spoke at Barack Obama's second inauguration. And also Tracy K. Smith, who was the 2012 Pulitzer Prize winner for poetry. So they'll be talking with people in an informal way Friday afternoon. Saturday there is a favorite poem reading where people from the community read their favorite poems. And there's also some student contest winners who wrote poems who will read their poems.
Great.
And then Saturday night there's a staged reading with Richard Blanco and Tracy K. Smith. And all of that's taking place at FST in a couple different locations, but all at FST. So that's really something kind of special to look forward to. Yeah. That only comes around once a year.
I need to spend some time with some poetry because I think of poetry and I think of Ogden Nash. So it's I need to go a little deeper into that.
That would be a good idea.
He was great. For theater fans, the Manatee Players is closing its main stage season with Phantom. Now, it's not the Andrew Lloyd Webber musical. It's another version, which I actually think is a better version, by Maury Yeston, who was the composer of Nine and Titanic, and Arthur Koppett, who has been a major award-winning writer and has spent some time down here at the Hermitage a few times, and I've gotten to know him a little bit over the years. And it's the same story as the other version. No big crashing chandeliers, though, but it's the story of a young man who's been disfigured and has been sort of kept hidden in the Paris Opera House. And he hears this diva who he can't stand and decides that he wants to do what he can to help promote a young singer named Christine Daae. And there's some beautiful music, and it's a really, I think, a much more touching, heartwarming version of the story because it's not so overblown as
and the music is all different.
It's a whole different score. You could see something familiar and something different at the same time. And James Hyde, who was in Les Miserables at the Manatee Players, played Marius a couple of years ago, is playing the Phantom. So I'm looking forward to seeing that.
And speaking of different music,
yeah, that's for sure.
You can always rely on New Music, New College to come up with some interesting new music. And this weekend, student composers have created compositions that will be played by the Sarasota String Quartet. So you're talking really cutting edge. You're talking not only New Music, New College, you're talking about the new crop of composers from New Music, New College. So that's Sunday afternoon at Sainer Pavilion, and it's free. So
it's a good encouragement to go experiment and try something different.
Exactly.
And I don't want to, maybe the segue isn't the best one, but speaking of experimenting, Urbanite Theater, which is the new downtown theater that started last summer, is closing out its first main season with a new play called Drowning Girls, which is about three women who were killed, who married the same man, who then killed each one of them successively. It was a serial killer. And they were known as the Brides in the Bath. This happened in the early 20th century in England, and this play gives them voice and lets them tell their story, and while the trial is going on in a nearby room, and it sounds really kind of fascinating and a little bit creepy.
Yeah.
So that's running through May 22nd.
If you're looking for something perhaps a little more heartwarming,
Okay.
with some familiar faces, the West Coast Black Theater Troupes is doing Driving Miss Daisy, which many people are familiar with from the film. And there's some familiar faces, local faces, in the production. Carolyn Michael is Miss Daisy. She's familiar as a longtime Oslo Repertory Theater member. Taurine Black, formerly of Hill Street Blues, will be the chauffeur.
And he was here a couple years ago in The Whipping Man at West Coast Black Theater Troupe.
Okay,
so
yeah.
People may have seen him then, too.
I remember that. And Howard Millman, who happens to be Carolyn Michael's husband, is directing, and he's a favorite director around here. So that runs through May 28th, and does it open this weekend?
It does.
Yeah,
it does.
Opens this weekend.
Saturday night. And there are two other theater things I want to mention. One, the Starlight Players, which have been operating at the Starlight Room, sort of near downtown Sarasota, have another collection of 4 short plays, all sort of romantic comedies that are under the bill Let Me Call You Sweetheart. So that's going on this weekend, and you get a discount for dinner if you eat dinner at the Starlight Room, either before or after the show. And next week in Tampa, beginning Tuesday, the touring production of Beautiful, the Carole King musical, is opening at the Strass Center in Tampa. And it's a show I haven't had a chance to see on Broadway, but I'm looking forward to, partly, or maybe mostly, because 2 of the people in the show have ties to Sarasota. The woman playing Carole King, Abby Mueller, was here at the Oslo playing Abigail Adams a few years ago. And her sister, Jessie Mueller, is the one who created the role on Broadway and won a Tony Award for it. And the actress playing her mother, Jeannie Klein, is Suzanne Grodner, who is a 1980s graduate of the FSU Oslo Conservatory, who has been back here many times, most recently about 10 years ago in the musical The Plexiglass Slipper, playing an evil stepmother. I've gotten to know her over the years. She's a wonderful actress, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what she's doing and catching up with some great Carole King songs.
Yeah, I mean, who of our vintage doesn't Carole King, where it's kind of a lot of the defining music of our era. Anyway, there's all that and more, and you can read about it in Sunday's Herald-Tribune in the art section, or online at ticketsarasota.com. And join us next week for another scintillating episode of Spotlight on the Arts.
Yeah, hopefully the Pulitzer jury is watching this. So.
Yeah.
See ya.
Right.